Hi, folks. Thank you again for coming on to Back to Basics for Season 3. Today, we're going to speak with Stacie Shifflett, and we're going to talk to her about life, a transition of life, what she has gone through and over the years, and what she's learned over the years. That's what we're going to go and talk about. It is not an easy life. It is a great life for her, but learn from her. Try to understand what she's all about. So let's speak with Stacie on Back to Basics. I'll see you there. Hi, folks. Thank you again for coming on to Back to Basics for Season 3. You know, we're very close to closing the Season 3 down. And today we're going to go and speak with Stacie, and we're going to find out what she's all about. You know, I've already introduced her earlier. So listen to that, obviously. Rewind there. But, you know, this is not for introduction here. This is for chit-chatting with Stacie today and trying to get her know better. So why don't we just stop talking to me and why don't we talk to my guest? I think that's the right way to doing it. Stacie, how are you? And thank you for coming to Back to Basics.
Hi, Krish. I'm great. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you again for coming here. But before we start the whole episode that we're going to talk about today, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
You know, I to me, it really means getting back to the fundamentals, right? I think that we create so much stress and pressure in our lives that we really move away from our true values and our desires. And I think we need to get back to basics with those and reacquaint ourselves with those because we lose track of them along the way. And forge ahead in life to follow those desires and goals and create the best life that we can be.
Yeah, thank you again, Stace, for answering that question. But let me ask you this here: um, is it a certain age group that we think that, oh wow, I forgot about what I was meant to do, what is my target? That's your back to basic thing, or do you think that it's a career thing that we stop and then we don't realize where we end up? Does that make sense?
It does. It's really interesting. I've got the company Modern Consciousness, and the first aspect of modern consciousness is what I call Automaton 2.0, and it recognizes 2.0 because we're adults now, right? So we come into this world helpless. We have to learn everything. People teach us everything through our families, through the institutions we're raised in. Our beliefs are adopted. We're told what to think, what to behave, what's going to bring us happiness. We have all of this for a very long time in our lives, right? We're pushed into a school system, which is we have to be educated. That's not a bad thing. I'm not saying any of this is bad. We aspire to go to college, get a degree, get a career, work up the ladder. So those are the things that we think we should be doing, and we do those. And I find that at some point, people start to go, gosh, really? Is this all there is? Because the things that they believed would make them happy don't necessarily make them happy and bring them joy. And I think we get caught up in the momentum of life, and the activities of our lives push us forward more so than being intentional, stepping back and really being intentional, reevaluating and assessing what we do and adjusting. And it's a learning curve.
Yeah, thank you again for that. What makes you happy? Let's put it this way.
What makes me happy? I think the secret sauce to life is being at peace within your mind and in your heart.
And it took you a long time to get there. Is that how it is?
Yeah, it really does. I think it does. I think, I think we think a lot of things are going to make us happy, and they provide a very good foundation, right? I mean, I had, when striving through my career years and so on and so forth, I worked really, really hard. I worked a lot of hours. I enjoyed it. I really did thrive off of it, and it created a very good foundation for me. But I've learned that that's not what I want to do anymore. And I think with COVID, we had the Great Resignation. I think that really caused a lot of people to stop. We were forced to stop and stay in our homes, and I think that a lot of people began to reevaluate the course of their lives.
Yeah, thank you again for explaining that, and thank you again for being here on my podcast here. Let me ask you this: the transformation of life. Now, what does that mean to you before I move further with this?
The transformation of life. It really is getting to know ourselves and moving beyond our programming, and that we have lots and lots of programming. As I said, it's just the nature of how we're raised and brought into this world.
Hmm.
And I think when we start looking at what's causing us stress, what's causing us frustration, the inner clutter, if you will, and start realigning that really to what we want from the depths of our soul, right?
Hmm.
And I think that we can find that things become out of alignment, and until we stop and observe that and figure out why do we feel so frustrated inside, right? We have everything. So many of us, we have so much, but why do I not feel happy? Well, maybe if I do this, or maybe if I do that, or when I get this. So I really think that it's a matter of slowing down and getting back to basics within ourselves. I think getting heart centered within ourselves, and I think unraveling that great mystery of our minds for a bit, our beliefs.
Yeah, thank you again for that. Um, a thought came in my mind is that kids nowadays are entitled. When I say entitled, I mean that they have everything in their fingertips. You know, with all the education that we're giving them, all the tools that we're giving them, all the mistakes that I've made, I'm teaching them that don't do them.
Hmm.
Do you think that we're giving them too much information, or we need to step back a little and have them learn on their own, if that makes sense?
It does make sense, and I tend to really look at it as the way that the pendulum swings, and especially within the last couple of generations. It's just from my observations. Um, my parents didn't. We have a generation that didn't necessarily go to college, right? Or maybe they had some education. Their goal was, for my generation as an example, right, to, gosh, go to college and get a degree. And I think that my generation carried that forth with our children as well. But I think so many of us find so much, those of us that are very successful, um, how can I say this? I think that we try to make life for our next generation better than ours,
Hmm.
right? So I think it's a natural progression to all of the giving, right? And to having all of these things made easily available that were maybe not as available to us, and certainly not as available to the previous generation, right?
Hmm.
If I look at my parents' generation, myself, and then the children from my generation, um, the younger ones, I don't know about the younger ones. I don't have a lot of experience with the younger ones. But I think it's done with good intention. But I think the outcome is not necessarily what we would expect or what we intended always. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
It does make sense because now I think of it, uh, back in the times, the savings were a little different versus today's savings, or investments were different before than today. So I think there are always different thought processes. Uh, are we saying we're scared? Sure, we are scared. We should be scared. But if you don't try it, then you would never know, right? What are your thoughts on that part?
I think part of it too is, we need to, they do need to get out. I'm not a everybody gets a ribbon sort of girl, right? I don't think that, I think there are a lot of lessons that our children learn that are very valuable lessons. It's great when you win, but you don't always win. So I don't know that we're necessarily teaching them the coping skills that they
Right.
need.
Right.
That would be my answer to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you again for that. Let me ask you this: Can you can you explain to people as to how did you get to where you are today? Because I've talked to you twice so far, right before this recording, and then obviously in the pre-call, that I think I can learn a lot from you, but you don't really realize that, honestly. So can you
Oh,
explain?
thank you. I probably don't. I've 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 done a lot of things in my life. I've had a lot of different careers. I've had a lot of different experiences. I was driven, and honestly, and I may have told you this on the pre-call. I honestly didn't really realize till a few years ago just how strong of a value I had from a very young age to self-actualization, right? Because I was called stubborn. I was going to figure it out myself. I was going to do it my way. I was going to have those experiences that, some of them I'm sure my parents really wished I probably hadn't had. And through all of that, I built my success. I was married for a very long time, and after 28 years of marriage, the marriage imploded, not in a particularly nice way, not in a calm way. I mean, it was it was it was it was an explosion. I mean, it imploded, and it changes your whole life. It was my decision to not live that way any longer,
Hmm.
and that was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. And in my first book, Ignite Your Wisdom, that I did with Les Brown and JBO and at Ignite Publishing, I think my statement there was, sometimes the right thing to do is the hardest.
Hmm.
And it really is. So after that experience, after a couple of years of living after that experience, I lived through it, obviously. uh, Most of us do live through divorce, right? We survive. Sometimes we come out better on the other side of it. We can always come out better on the other side of it. It's what you make of it. But I realized at some point from my own journey along the way, I realized that everything looked good on the outside, but I really didn't feel good on the inside. I
Hmm.
was not going to be able to sustain my life in that way, because I was angry, and I didn't feel good inside, right? I didn't have that peaceful heart. So that's what set me about on my journey of really personal development, which has been probably a decade now.
Thank you again for that. I'll tell you one thing. The two times that I have spoken to you, this is the third time now recording. Um, you're happier. I can tell you from all the stuff that you have interacted with me, all the stuff that we joke around and we shared some stories together of what I'm doing and what you're doing. But thank you again for being you, who you are right
Oh,
now.
thank you.
So let me ask you this, Stace. When it comes to transition from a life that you, I guess your parents have, taught you, and then you went further, and then you broke down again, after marriage, and then you went up again. How did that transition happen? Because no matter what hurdle you go through, it's tough, right? When you lose someone, that's tough. That's grieving, and then that grieving never stops. So when did your grieving kind of start?
Well, I grieving grieving morphs, right? So my anger was really grief, right, after the
Yeah.
divorce. And I don't remember if we talked about this or not, but my mantra through that time period, I lost my first son. My first son died, and I equate that to going to hell and coming back. I was fortunate to come back from that, and I realized that, obviously my husband at the time helped with that, but it was a real, in my family was supportive as well, but the real realization for me through that experience, and I think this is also what got me to move forward in such a bold way, um after, with this new part of my life, is I went to a grief counseling session. The doctors had recommended that I go to one, and I went in there, and one of the gentlemen that was in there, one of the dads, and it was people that had lost children of all ages, as he was talking with us, he indicated that it had been 5 years since their child had died, and they, as I said, they were all under different circumstances. And his wife still couldn't go to the grocery store. She still was unable to leave the house to do even, what we would normally call simple things. And I have deep compassion for that, and I understand that, because I too didn't want to leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
But something went in my head. My head just kind of clicks and goes, I don't want to be in this place emotionally in 5 years.
Hmm.
So I'm going to need to do something different.
Hmm.
And going through the divorce, my mantra at first, I had my own business. I had a construction company in DC. I've got my own home. I was financially able to do all those things. And I kept telling myself, if I survive the death of my first son, I can survive this. So that was kind of my mantra. And then I sort of had the same realization in that, gosh, the life I was living was not one that I could continue to live
Hmm.
and find my happiness, because where I was trapped in grief before, I was trapped in anger this time.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I made my move.
You did. You did. Thank you. Thank you again for making that move. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here on my show. On top of that,
Thank you.
so thank you again for being here and making that change. We started a new segment on Back to Basic for season 3, which is the rapid fire round. In this rapid fire round, I have some words and sentences. Whatever pops in your head, we'll just go from there. How about that?
Okay, well, we'll see how I do with that.
Okay.
I'm
Let's see.
more of a I'm more of a thinker, I'm more of a contemplator, but I'll
Sure,
I'll
sure.
I'll do my best,
Let me
Chris.
see how much I can challenge you on this one here. The first one is going to be phase 1 versus phase 2.
Which is
You
just what
tell
that
me.
means to me.
Yeah. What does that mean to you?
Well, I would equate that at this point in my life, I would equate that to phase one being before my awakening, for lack of a better word, right? That word gets hijacked a lot to mean only spiritual. It's really an awakening to myself, to my own awareness, to really knowing myself, to knowing more about humanity, how our brains work, all of that stuff. So phase one would be the before, and phase two would be after.
Hmm. So are we on phase 2 right now?
I am on phase two as an individual. So I think as individuals that remains to be for the individual to figure out.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
The next one is going to be adaptation.
Adaptation. I think that to me probably means flexibility and resilience.
Hmm. Okay. Happy versus smile.
Smile is a gesture, and a smile can indicate happiness, but we all know there can also be, false, the false smile. So, happiness to me is really radiated from within.
Okay. The next one is going to be work harder versus work smarter.
Work harder versus work smarter. I think we should always work smarter.
Hmm.
I think when we're trying to force an outcome is the harder.
Hmm.
And I think the flow is the smarter to get into the flow.
Okay. The next one is education versus life.
I think education, if we're talking in terms of formal institutional education, it's extraordinarily valuable. And there's a lot of things we need to learn. We need to learn everything, right? We come into this world knowing nothing, as I said earlier. I think life to me represents more of our experience, common sense, wisdom, and really joining the two together into a complete whole.
Okay. The next one is generation.
Generation, unending. It's generation after generation. I think that each generation has its challenges. I think we have our achievements, and there'll be many more to come.
Okay. The next one is inside versus outside.
Inside versus outside.
Hmm.
Again, I would probably equate that to internal, our internal being versus the external being, and um, loving ourselves for ourselves versus based on external circumstances.
Okay. Modern uh, consciousness.
Oh yes, that's the name of my company, and that really is living consciously and intentionally in the modern world, right? With our modern issues, our modern pace, all of that.
Mm. Okay. The next one is going to be Stacie is.
Stacie is she's a pretty remarkable student of life, I think. Um, Stacie is compassionate. Stacie is intelligent. Um, I try to be the best that I can be.
Okay. And the last one is going to be, thank you again for that. And the last one is going to be back to basics.
Back to basics. Again, I really think it's not overcomplicating our lives, which we tend to do, and getting back to simpler things. And by that I mean a simpler understanding of things,
Mm.
right? To really get down to what it really is, not what we think it is.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for playing that rapid fire round. Hopefully, I didn't really stump you on that. Stacie, let me ask you this. What does it mean by neat formula? What does that mean to you?
Oh, that's thank you for bringing that up. So, I think that we unlock our potential really through our awareness, and raising our awareness to understand when we start to really look at what we're thinking, and we catch those thoughts, and we catch our behaviors and all of that. I think it's important for us to remember four things, and that's to notice it, which is the N in neat. Um, Examine it, then we need to attend to it. If we keep repeating the same behaviors over and over, or we keep having the same thoughts over and over, we keep getting the same results. So we need to attend to it to then transform it, which is the T. So it's notice it, examine it, attend to it, and then transform it into something that's positive for you. And that doesn't mean glossing over it. You might have to reframe it. It's a way that is positive for your health,
Hmm.
for your overall health, including your mental health and emotional health.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you again for that. And with your definition of this episode, which part of the four do you think that we're part of? Part of the neat transmitting.
On the back to basics, I think we first have to notice it, right? We can't do anything about any of it unless we notice it. So I thank you for having these episodes to bring awareness so that people can stop and take notice, and then providing them with a little bit of information, some information through the podcast to allow them to examine it, right? And to get some different opinions and hear some different perspectives on it, because we get so we get so narrow in our perspective, we don't always appreciate or hear other perspectives.
Yeah. Thank you again for being here, Stacie, and thank you again for supporting me. But before you leave, let me ask you this: is there a book or movie or music that you listen to that resonates with you all your life? Because it seems like we all need some type of medium, some type of book, or some type of something to give us a boost.
I really don't have a single source for that. Um, at this point in my life, I'm trying to think. I mean, I've always loved music. I have been an avid reader for quite a while now, decades, but it's pretty much personal development stuff. So I read one thing and then another and then another. Um, yeah, I really don't have a single thing. My go-to now and for years now has been meditation, really, is where I go to decompress and reset and reground myself.
Yeah, thank you again for that. I've been told by somebody that instead of reading several books, we should be just reading one book and keep on reading over and over again because there are many different diversions with that just one book. That is just a guidance that I got from somebody. I don't know if I'm going to take it or not, but I I think he's got it. I think he got that advice and from someone else, someone elderly, from him. So I'm passing it on to you and everyone else, whoever's listening here.
Well, good. I'll pull a few of my favorites out and reread them.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, we'll come out with different perspectives. You never know, right? So thank you again.
Mhm.
But Stace, before you leave here today, do you have any last words to all my Back to Basic listeners and viewers? And how is your journey on Back to Basics too? On top of that,
Oh, doing the podcast has been great. It's been great working with you, Grish, and I appreciate that so much. I think I would just say be attentive to your life. We really do create our lives. Our thoughts create our lives. If we are always feeling miserable, we're going to create more misery. So focus on creating some happiness and joy.
yeah, that is so true. Thank you again for Stacy for coming here on Back to Basics and sharing all the nuggets that you have shared. And I can see all the journeys that you've gone through, and hopefully, you'll come back to Basics with your Phase 3 version of Stacy. So thank you again for coming here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So, guys, today we spoke with Stacy, didn't we? And we talked about the journey of life, the hurdles of life, the struggles of life. I mean, that's what I'm going to go and go through with this episode. But there's one thing that she did say, that there's a notice and then there's a transformation in that whole formula that she came up with. Why don't you just listen to that? Why don't you go and follow her work? Try to understand who she is and what she's all about. And I'm telling you, she's in a good place and a great place because she gave me some few advices right before the phone call that we had today. And she's an amazing person. Now, as usual, as always, there's a quote of the day from Back to Basics, and hopefully my guest will like the quote. The quote is, embrace each challenge in your life as an opportunity for self-transformation. Now, embrace each challenge in your life as an opportunity for self-transformation. Guys, let me tell you something. When you want to transform, it's you, it's not anyone else. That's all. That is all I care for. Now, as usual, as always, what do we always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what Back to Basics is all about. Thank you, guys. Take care, and I will see you next week on Back to Basics.
I'm still learning and still getting comfortable.
Of course.
This is a different world than my other worlds.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like the quote?
I do. I love it. And I think it is. That's where we find our growth. If everything was easy, we
Guys,
wouldn't.
thank you again for tuning in to Back to Basics and listening to the excellent episode that we had today with our guest. With your love and support, we do need you to at least rate our show, review our show, because it does make us stronger day by day, week by week, as I usually say on my episodes. And there are 3 things in this episode that it makes a hit for me, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. So guys, take care, God bless, and remember, everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and see you next time on Back to Basics.